we have a systematic problem because the current calculation for NTAs or national tax allotment does not aim for a peso for peso correspondence between the NTA that each LGU will receive and the cost of devolved programs for each particular LGU. Ang hinihiling ko, kung piso ang NTA natin ay babagsak ng gobyerno, sana piso rin ang i-devolve na programa sa mga LGU. Hindi ho pwede na piso ang ibibigay nyo sa LGU, 1 million pesos ang programa ibabagsak ninyo sa LGU. Magko-collapse po talaga ang LGU.
Walang takot ngang ipinaglaban ni Congressman Richard Gomez ang di patas na budget para sa mga LGUs. Pero bago ang lahat, maaari kayong mag-subscribe para maging updated sa mga issue at bagong mga balita. Walang kasing tapang ang ipinaglaban ni Congressman Richard Gomez ang patungkol sa di patas na pagbibigay ng budget para sa mga LGU ng pamahalaang nasyonal. Ayon kay Gomez, kailangan umano ng sapat na suporta ang mga LGUs para sa ikakaunlad nito. Ngunit mga buwaya sa gobyerno, hindi sang-ayon sa gusto ni Gomez. Narito ang buong detalye.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the gentleman from the 4th District of Leyte, the Honorable Richard I. Gomez, to avail of the privilege hour.
The Honorable Gomez from the 4th District of Leyte is recognized to avail of the privilege hour. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My distinguished colleagues, especially to the former mayors and governors, thank you for this opportunity. I stand before you today not just as a congressman, but also as a former chief executive to shed light on the issues surrounding the mandate of full devolution of certain functions as a result of the Mandanas-Garcia Supreme Court ruling. Beginning this year, while the LGUs have received proportional increase in their NTAs or national tax allotment, the executive branch also ordered a full devolution of functions by 2024 via Executive Order number 138 and National Budget Memorandum 138. The latter ordered the national agencies the following, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, number 1, refrain from funding devolved local projects to first up to fourth class municipalities. Number 2, include funding requirement for capacity building for these LGUs. And number 3, limit the subsidies for local projects to LGUs belonging to the 5th and 6th class municipalities, geographically isolated depressed areas or GAIDAs, as well as those ranked in the top third highest poverty indices. End of quote. The logic behind this is simple and well-intentioned. That since the NPAs have increased, the LGUs could now afford all public services legally devolved to them. But unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, when you go down to the LGU level, the implementation of full devolution of programs is not as straightforward as it seems. Hindi ho talaga kaya. This year, the budget problems are hardly felt since the LGUs have received considerable increases in their national tax allotment because these are still based on the 2019 national taxes. However, we all know that national taxes and incomes in the years 2020 and 21 have been hardest hit due to the global economic recession resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. And I believe that this, among other considerations which I will present shortly, signal an imminent funding crisis for LGUs, at the very least in years 2023 and 2024. I will cite concrete examples for Ormoc City and the municipality of Merida, both under the district I represent. For the municipality of Merida, its problems begin with unclear income classification. It's classified as 5th class according to the DBM and 4th class according to the Department of Finance. Either way, its total 2023 reduction in funding reaches up to 23 million pesos. This has resulted in some canceled agricultural programs and 50% reduction in funding for medicine for communicable diseases and preventive medicines. The municipalities' assistance for individuals in crisis has also been reduced. In the same way, its agri programs suffers a situation where the LGU is unable to fund the distribution of rice seeds and corn seeds for year 2023. While the problems are glaring for a municipality straddling between 4th and 5th class, higher income class LGUs are definitely not spared as well. Now, the situation in the city of Ormoc, a first-class independent component city, is both similar and different. Similar in that the LGU has also begun to experience reductions in NGA funding, or the National Government Agency funding, and NTA. Yet its various departments are coping in different ways. For example, because the City Health Department diligently processed its reimbursement for the COVID-19 vaccinations, it has now access to a special health fund, which they are using to fill the funding gaps. Because of this, their programs are only minimally affected. On the other hand, the city's agricultural office does not have the same access to gap financing funds now. They are forced to cancel some key programs, including its Maritime Development Program and Fertilizer Subsidy Program, which had a budget of 9 million in 2022. For Ormoc's DepEd, while full devolution has not been implemented for all programs, the construction of classrooms, which is most funding intensive at 2.2 million pesos per classroom, has been turned over to the LGUs already. Because the LGU of Ormoc could not fund all construction of classrooms, the Ormoc DepEd has resorted to prioritizing construction per face-to-face need and building classrooms using lower-cost building designs just to stretch the local school board's special education fund. Ang classroom po ay 2.2 million ang isa. Ang backlog namin ay almost 80 classrooms. 60 million pesos lang ang school board fund for 2023. 80 plus classrooms is 176 million. Classrooms alone, ubos na ang local school board fund ng Ormoc City. Another funding-intensive program is the construction of farm-to-market roads, and since the DPWH has fully devolved this for next year, and the LGU has not allocated any funds specifically for farm-to-market roads, it is most likely that none will be next year. Importante ang farm-to-market roads sa mga lugar na probinsya katulad namin. Sa Metro Manila, wala kayong farm-to-market roads. Wala rin agricultural program, so wala kayong problema dyan. From the point of view of NGAs or national government agencies, preparations for full devolution are also largely unclear. So far, there are only two departments, the Department of Health and the Commission on Population Development, that have approved devolution transition plans as per DBM's website. The problems involving devolution of programs are nothing new, with the problems always revolving around the lack of funding. In fact, this has been ongoing for 30 years since the enactment of the Local Government Code na sinasabi, full devolution program sa mga LGU. Besides the 3-year lag in funding source and use, we have a systematic problem because the current calculation for NTAs or national tax allotment does not aim for a peso-for-peso correspondence between the NTA that each LGU will receive and the cost of devolved programs for each particular LGU. Ang hinihiling ko, kung piso ang NTA natin ay babagsak ng gobyerno, sana piso rin ang i-devolve na programa sa mga LGU. Hindi ho pwede na piso ang ibibigay nyo sa LGU, 1 million pesos ang programa ibabagsak ninyo sa LGU, magko-collapse po talaga ang LGU. Kung hindi natin gagawa ng paraan, magka-align ang NTA at cost of devolved functions, palagi na lang magiging kapos sa budget ang mga LGUs natin at sila po ay talagang magko-collapse. In the next few days, I'll be filing 2 legislative actions, Mr. Speaker, one to address the funding gap needs, and the other to address the misalignment between the calculation of NTAs and the cost of devolved functions. I wish to reiterate the urgency on this matter, Mr. Speaker. kailangan bigyan natin ng pansin ang nagbabadyang budget crisis ng mga LGUs ngayon 2023 and 2024. Pababayaan ba natin bumagsak ang mga LGUs natin? Ako ho ay galing sa LGU. Hindi ko kayang talikuran, hindi ko kayang pikit ang mga mata ko habang alam natin na pwede nating iwasan ito. In closing, I'd like to thank Governor Mandanas of Batangas and Governor Garcia of Bataan for championing the rights of LGUs. And lastly, I cannot overemphasize how vital the roles of LGUs are in how our country operates. Sa lahat ng mga nagsisilbi sa ating mga LGU sa buong Pilipinas, I applaud you and salute you. For our country will be without its arms and legs if not for our LGUs. And for all of us here in the House of Representatives, I hope and pray that we all work together and take action now. By God's grace, we just might strike that balance so that our country, our beloved Philippines, can get back on her feet as soon as possible. Dagan kayong salamat, Mr. Speaker. Mabuhay tayong lahat at magandang hapon po sa inyo. Thank you.
Thank you. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the gentleman from the 5th District of Bulacan, the Honorable Ambrosio C. Cruz Jr., for his interpellation.
Okay, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Cruz is recognized to interpolate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, will the gentleman from Ormoc yield to some questions?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Maraming salamat po.
Okay. Alam po ninyo, because of the Mandanas Bill, ang nakita natin kanina, nag-increase ang ating NTA by 24%. Sadly, by 2023, it went down to almost 15%. So on the average, each LGU from an increase of almost 50 to 100 million, at the same time, it went down this year to almost 50 to 100 million. Ito ho yung predicament ngayon lahat ng LGU. How do you propose an equitable computation of the NTAs para natin makorek yung ating situation?
Mr. Speaker, yan po yung kailangan natin pag-usapan. Right now, the computation is not clear. Hindi rin kaya ng isang tao o ng isang agency lang ang gagawa nun. That is why I brought this up at sana tayo ng mga congressman magawa natin ng paraan dahil tayong lahat dito, we represent an LGU na sigurado magkakaroon ng problema by year 2023 and 2024. Dito sa problema ito, Mr. Speaker, sana po magkatulungan tayo, hanapan natin ang solusyon. Right now, I will tell you, I do not have a concrete solution. This is the reason why I'm crying for help. Kailangan magkaisa tayo dito, Mr. Speaker.
I agree with you. Sa ating proponent, nakita natin ang laki ng problema. Napakahirap ipaliwanag sa tao na yung budget natin, instead of increasing, bumaba. And how do we address the needs? And we know for a fact na wala naman tigil ang pagdagdag at paglaki ng pangailangan ng ating mga kababayan. So under the provision, budgetary provision 138, ang merong discrimination din dito kasi yung first class to second class municipalities, ang binibigyan lamang yung between third to fifth class assistance. So
Yes.
how do we address this problem?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Yung problema po ng pagbigay po ng sharing, hindi lang po involved sa 5th and 6th class. Lahat po ng LGU talaga nangangailangan ng budgetary requirements kung magkakaroon tayo ng full devolution. That is why I'm asking na dapat ang computation natin ay piso por piso. Piso ang ibibigay sa atin galing sa national tax allocations. Dapat yung mga national government agencies, 1 peso din lang ang ibibigay nila na devolved program sa atin. Hindi ho pwede na, hindi ho pareho yon. Because definitely, the LGUs cannot serve their purpose. Hindi po nila matutulungan, hindi po nila mabibigay yung mga serbisyo na kinakailangan tao sa mga devolved programs na ibibigay ng national government agencies natin, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. I agree with you 100% at sana ho ating mga kolig dito tulungan tayo para magkaroon ng adjustment itong share ng LGU. That's all, Mr. Speaker.
Maraming salamat, Mr. Speaker. Maraming salamat sa kongresista natin from Bulacan. Maraming salamat at umaasa po ako na susuportahan niyo itong panukalang gagawin natin.
Yes, you have my 101% support.
Salamat po. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I would like to make it a record that I am supportive of this measure known as the new Agrarian Emancipation Act. However, I have some clarificatory questions. So, may I know whether either or both the sponsors would yield?
The honorable sponsor, the chairman, two chairmen are with us this afternoon. The honorable Salceda will answer.
Thank you very much.
Under this bill, Mr. Speaker, there will be a total condemnation of an agrarian reform beneficiary's indebtedness to the government for the awarded lands, both with respect to arrearages and future amortization. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
How much will an agrarian reform beneficiary benefit from the condonation on an annual basis?
On a nominal basis, it's, well, the grand total, the principal, inclusive of all the surcharges, is 58.1 billion. So on an annual basis, we'll compute, Your Honor. Can we proceed to the next question while we're trying to upload from our database?
Well, in the first place, the computation should be on an annual basis because the government is not going to forfeit immediately in 1 year the 58 billion because the amortizations are spread out through the years. Anyway, may we know whether how many agrarian reform beneficiaries have totally paid their indebtedness corresponding to the lands awarded to them since the enactment of the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law on June 15, 1988.
Now?
I am referring to those who were not delinquent but has fully paid.
Again, can I ask for a few minutes just to upload, Your Honor, the data?
May we also know whether the sponsoring committees have any data on how many agrarian reform beneficiaries have defaulted and there are now pending proceedings for the forfeiture of the lands awarded to them.
We're taking down all the questions, Your Honor, and we will try to answer them as soon as we get the official numbers. Meron ka ba?
And also, may we know whether the sponsoring committees have any data on how many agrarian reform beneficiaries will benefit from this new Agrarian Emancipation Act?
Officially, the 654,000.
What is the basis of that figure? May we know, Mr. Speaker,
DAR.
distinguished sponsor.
DAR and Land Bank.
Can we have the report of Land Bank and DAR with respect to this figure?
Yes, Your Honor. We will ask for a certification.
Now, under this proposal, under this measure, the agrarian reform beneficiary cannot sell, transfer, or convey except through hereditary succession or to the government or to the Land Bank of the Philippines or to other qualified beneficiaries through the DAR for a period of 10 years
That's correct, Your Honor.
from the issuance of the certificate
Of condemnation.
of continuation.
That's correct, Your Honor.
May we know whether that prohibition would include the inability of the agrarian reform beneficiary to mortgage the land as a collateral for any indebtedness to a banking institution or to a private individual?
They can, but nobody will accept it.
That's not a way. My
Yes.
question is whether they are prohibited or they are not prohibited from mortgaging
They're not
land.
prohibited, Your
They
Honor.
are not prohibited.
They're not prohibited.
In other words, they can mortgage.
Yes.
And if they mortgage and fail to pay the mortgage indebtedness, the creditor, whether a banking institution or a private creditor, can foreclose the mortgage. Is that correct?
No, because there is a 10-year period.
Well, can we just specify that during the 10-year period, the agrarian reform beneficiary cannot mortgage? What can be mortgaged would be the products of the land, but not the land itself.
That's an innovative way of doing it, Your Honor, but I think we will submit it to the wisdom of this body, honorable body, whether we will, because I think in general, as an investment banker or as a banker myself, I will not accept an agrarian reform title which has this kind of tatak sa likod na hindi pwedeng ilipat within 10 years. Hindi wala akong tatanggap na creditor.
Yung bangko hindi tatanggap. But how about private individuals?
I think it's their call, Your Honor, but all I'm saying is that as a general rule, no banks will accept it,
No.
a mortgage that disallows foreclosure within 10 years.
Because the mortgagee may not only be a bank, the mortgagee could be a private individual. And my apprehension is that once the land is mortgaged and the agrarian reform beneficiary fails to pay his indebtedness, the mortgage will be foreclosed, and that will be the end of agrarian reform as far as that farmer beneficiary is concerned. So it would be best to spell in black and white that during that period of 10 years or even more, the injunction should include non-mortgage of the land.
At the appropriate time, Your Honor, during the period of amendments, certainly I think the body will consider that.
Yes, but what is the wisdom of the sponsor with respect to this proposal?
Your Honor, there were attempts before, even when this bill was not yet existent, prior to 2003. As a neophyte congressman, there were bills that were introduced in this Congress which essentially said that agrarian reform lands can be used as collateral. So, Your Honor, there were many attempts by this Congress
And
to give farmers or beneficiaries of agrarian reform access to credit they need in order to optimize the benefits, the fruits of their land ownership.
those bills never saw the light of day.
That's correct, Your Honor.
In
That's
other
why
words, the wisdom of Congress was not to allow agrarian reform beneficiaries to mortgage their land, because once they do that and they fail to pay, definitely agrarian reform will be doomed as far as that farmer is concerned. So we are trying to propose at the proper time that the right to mortgage should not also be included in this injunction for the period of 10 years or even more. As a social legislation, is the sponsor keen on retaining the 10-year period, or can we extend this to a longer period in order to really protect the agrarian reform beneficiary from losing his land?
I think 10 years for me is already too long.
It could be too short.
Well,
Many agrarian reform beneficiaries are not anymore covered by this provision. And there could be an avalanche of transfer. And definitely that will just destroy the program on agrarian reform. But at the proper time, we will make the necessary individual amendment. Now,
Your Honor, based on my advisor,